What I'd like to do at this point is I'd like to go ahead and welcome back Shelly Ramos. She's the Curriculum Division Director, and she is going to give us a TEA curriculum update. Let's welcome Shelly back.
Good morning, almost afternoon. Glad to see everybody made it through to today. As Diane mentioned, I'm here to share with you some curriculum updates, but a little bit more than that, really. So one of the things that I wanted to start off the day with was talking about legislative updates. I mentioned the other day, and many of you I'm sure know, that the Texas legislature was in session from January until early June of 2015, so just a few months ago. And I wanted to share with you some of the updates and some of the legislation that was signed into law from the 84th Texas legislature. And then in addition to that, I did want to go into some detail with you on the revised CTE text. So we'll talk about that in some depth. And hopefully it's not information you already know. Hopefully I'll be able to introduce some new things to share some new things about that to you. And then finally, I have just a very brief curriculum program updates. We're responsible for a number of programs at the agency in the curriculum division, and I have, I think, just one important update that I wanted to share with you. So I'm going to start first with legislative updates and just jump right on into there. So during the session, there were somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 education-related bills that were filed with the legislature. Just about, not even quite 100 of those were passed and signed into law. I'm glad to report that we're not responsible for all 100. And those of you who recall 2 years ago working through House Bill 5 in the Foundation High School program know it was not near as active a session for CTE this time around, for which we're grateful. But I did want to share some pieces of legislation that passed and were signed by the governor that will impact the work that you do, sort of on a day-to-day basis and maybe occasionally at that. The first bill is Senate Bill 149, and some of you may have already heard of this, especially those of you who work at a campus, at a high school campus where you have graduating seniors or seniors who hoped to be graduating. Senate Bill 149 created individual graduation committees. How many or IGCs, how many of you have heard of the IGCs? So a fair number of you. Some of you may even have been part of those committee decision-making processes. But what Senate Bill 149 did is that it established a process for the next couple of years by which a senior who has not yet met all their assessment graduation requirements, so those STAR EOC requirements, could still graduate under the review by an individual graduation committee. And so what the bill says is that a student, at the end of a student's 11th grade or in their 12th grade year, a district has to look at it and convene an IGC if that student has not yet met their assessment graduation requirements. To be eligible for an IGC review, a student has to have met 4 criteria. One is they have to be classified as a senior. In other words, this can't be done prior to the student's, or they can't graduate the student prior to their senior year. They can conduct an IGC, they just can't graduate the student until the student's classified as a senior. The student has to have passed all their course requirements for graduation. They have to have failed or they have to have been successful on 3 of the 5 required EOCs. So in other words, they can't have failed more than 2 end of course exams. And then they have to have had an opportunity to retest in those exams where they had not yet been successful. So those are the criteria that would make a student eligible for an individual graduation committee review. The law goes into great detail about who must be on these committees and what those committees must consider in making a decision about whether or not a student can graduate. There are 2 components that are required. One is that the committee has to require the student do additional remediation. The other component is that the committee has to require that the student do either a project or portfolio in the course or courses for which the student has failed to pass the end of course exam. And then the district or the IGC must consider 15 other factors, and it's a long list. It simply says they must consider them, and so that is where the individual graduation committee and the district has some flexibility. So from that list of 15 things that they should be looking at, it's things like scores on SAT and ACT exams, their grades in all their other coursework areas. So it's a long list, just different things that a district could consider and make a recommendation on. If the IGC makes a determination, then they can decide that the student will graduate and the student would be awarded a diploma. Probably the most important thing to share with you about this particular bill is that it is set to expire September 1st of 2017. Before that time arrives, though, or right around that time, the 85th Texas legislature will just have wrapped up business, so we will know at that time whether or not they choose to expire this legislation or whether or not they choose to continue it. A lot of the conversations surrounding this particular bill during the session were, this is a transitional period for students on STAR EOC, and I did not get the impression, especially with this language, that this language will remain in statute forever, but they certainly can revisit their decision about expiring the statute. So that's Senate Bill 149. That'll keep us all, and has kept us all busy. Another bill that is directly related, this bill is directly related to CTE education, is House Bill 18. And House Bill 18, you can see from its rather lengthy title, it was designed to provide measures to support public school student academic achievement and high school, college, and career preparation. So really the focus here is college and career prep. And what House Bill 18 does is it caught on one of the themes from this legislative session, and that theme was dual credit. So the bill said that an administrative rule that's passed by a state agency or a state board cannot limit the number of hours of dual credit that a high school student may enroll in, or the number of dual credit college hours that a student can earn credit in any given semester. So we'll talk about that again. You'll see it a few times. There were several pieces of legislation that all had very, very similar language about dual credit in it. Additionally, this particular bill required the Texas Education Agency to develop some information that explains the importance of endorsements and a distinguished level of achievement and other various parts of the House Bill 5 graduation requirements to parents. And it goes even so far as to tell us that literature that is produced has to be in English, in Spanish, in Vietnamese, and any other languages that we think are critical to reach. So that'll be something that the agency gets to work on pretty soon. We know that a number of districts already have that information available, but we'll be putting some additional information out, and it's geared at parents and its students. So this is the part of the bill that is probably most interesting to you all as CTE leaders. House Bill 18 requires every school district in the state to provide instruction to students in grades 7 or 8 on preparing for high school, college, and career. And it goes on to say that you can offer that instruction as part of an existing CTE course or as an elective course that the district offers. So districts have a lot of flexibility in how they provide that instruction. If, for example, you're using one of the middle school CTE courses, you're more than welcome to address it in that course, or you're also welcome to offer it in a different course that's offered as an elective by the district. So maybe you have a homeroom type course that every student takes for a certain amount of time every day. You could offer that instruction in that setting. So a great deal of flexibility. What's not so flexible, though, is a district needs to ensure that the student receives that instruction at least once in either 7th or 8th grade. So it's actually a really good thing. We think that this will be a great step in helping our students start to make decisions about what they want to do, what endorsement they want to follow, what courses they want to start taking when they get to high school. So a nice piece of this particular legislation. Then House Bill 18 goes into some more detail about this training. One of the things that they've done in trying to prepare students for high school, college, and career is they have required that there be some training developed for counselors. That's an interesting piece, and they did specify in the legislation that the University of Texas at Austin's Center for Teaching and Learning is going to be responsible for developing this training. So it's going to provide some training for counselors. It is also, if funding permits, going to provide teachers who participate in the training with a stipend. And the training is going to be geared at helping counselors add to their toolkit, add to their knowledge in terms of how to help students prepare for high school, college, and career. There will be opportunities for input into the training. The Center for Teaching and Learning is required to seek out input from TEA, from school counselors, from the Texas Workforce Commission, from a number of different areas so that they can use that input in helping to develop this particular training piece. One of the things it says, if you look at the third bullet there in blue, they also must develop an online instructional program that districts may use, and that may means it's permissive. They can use it, but they're not required to provide that instruction that we just talked about to the middle school students in 7th and 8th grade. So in addition to the training for counselors, the Center for Teaching and Learning is going to provide an online module or modules, we don't know yet what that's going to look like, that could be used by districts to help provide that instruction in preparing for high school, college, and career. So that's an added bonus for this particular piece of legislation. This was a rather lengthy bill, as you can tell, because I'm going to go on to another slide about it. Just a few other pieces, these may or may not be relevant to the work that you do, but one is for those of you who work in a school district where you have students taking the TSI assessment, the Texas Success Initiative, and that's an exam that was developed that allows students to qualify for admission into our Texas colleges and universities. It takes the place of the AccuPlacer and some of those older exams that had been in place. But one of the dilemmas that we heard about this session is that students in high school are taking the TSI, and the high schools are never finding out what their scores are. So what this particular piece of legislation has required is that an institution of higher education that administers a TSI assessment to students is now required to report those results back to the student's high school. So whether it's a junior or a senior and the student's left, that information will still be reported back to the district. It's a good thing, you know, the more data that we have, the better the decisions we could make in how we structure our instruction. So this is a really good thing, and I know that districts around the state who have started to hear about this are really excited about it. And the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board is working with their institutions to make sure that they put in place these this reporting requirement. And then the last part of the bill that I wanted to share with you simply focuses on the qualifications of instructors for dual credit at junior colleges. So while this is new in statute, it establishes the criteria that an individual must meet to be eligible to teach a junior college credit course. It's not new. What we've learned from our colleagues over at the coordinating board is junior colleges across the state were already requiring these, so it's either a master's degree in a content area or a bachelor's degree in a certain number of years of experience. So it's not new, it's just new in statute. And then it goes on to say that if a junior college rejects an individual, they must provide information about why, and they also must notify them within 60 days of their approval or rejection. So that's House Bill 18. Moving on to House Bill 181. This is probably my favorite piece of legislation from the session because we got a lot of calls after House Bill 5 was signed into law, and especially as that first group of students that were graduating, as graduation started to get closer and closer last spring, we got all sorts of calls from panicked registrars and counselors and principals because they said, wait a minute, the bill says that we have to put on the diploma and the transcript all of the performance acknowledgments, all of the endorsements, and a distinguished level of achievement. But those of you know who are out there in schools, those diplomas are undifferentiated, or at least they had been. But House Bill 5 required all this be put on a diploma. And I know there are folks who came and testified before the State Board of Education that these were going to be poster-sized diplomas, and extremely expensive because when you go out and customize them, there were all these costs involved with it. And I heard tell of diploma companies producing stickers, and they were color-coded, and it sounded all very confusing and complicated. But the legislature heard from counselors and teachers and principals loud and clear that this was a burden. So House Bill 181 took away that requirement. So that information is no longer required to be included on a diploma. However, and this is important, it is still required to be included on a student's transcript or academic achievement record. And that's the appropriate place for this information. But it's no longer required to be in both places. House Bill 505, I mentioned at the beginning that dual credit was a recurring theme during this legislative session. And House Bill 505 picked up some similar language from House Bill 18, very, very similar language. It says that an administrative rule, in other words, the rules that are adopted by the Commissioner of Education, by the Coordinating Board, by the State Board of Education, by any state agency, cannot limit the number of hours of dual credit that a student enrolls in a semester. It may not limit the number of dual credit courses that a student may take. It may not limit the grade levels of that a student has to be in order to enroll in dual credit. So for those of you who are used to the way things were last year, you had to be a junior or senior to be eligible for dual credit. You have to meet the TSI eligibility requirements, which still remain in place. And a student couldn't take more than 12 college credit hours a year. So all of those rules are gone. So those have been eliminated. Now, it does say an administrative rule. So one of the first things that started happening after this piece of legislation was signed into law is that districts started calling and saying, well, can we have policies about that? Nothing in this particular piece of legislation limits a school district. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. If your district wants to investigate policies related to dual credit, you have the authority to do so. This limited state agencies from putting limits on dual credit. All right. House Bill 1430, this one directly relates to endorsements in career and technical education. And what this particular piece of legislation does is there was a subcommittee last interim session. Several legislatures formed a subcommittee, and they were investigating the health professions. And one of the things that they determined during their investigations is that there is a serious shortage of professionals and individuals going into mental health careers in the state. And so one attempt that they made to try and address that shortage is that they have said that now anything that the agency puts out related to health professions must include information for students related to mental health professions. So anything related to health science has to also include mention of mental health professions. So an attempt to kind of promote the need for this particular shortage area in the state. And in addition to that, there must be a mental health career pathway within the endorsements. We let them know there already is. I mean, they can do that within the health science or within the public services endorsement. Depends on the student's coherent sequence of courses. So that's not really a change. It's just something that they wanted to highlight and draw more attention to the mental health professions. House Bill 1431 is another one that directly relates to CTE. And what this particular piece of legislation did is it said that the State Board of Education, who has authority for the TEKS, or the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, must develop a new course. And that new course must be, and you can see in the blue letters there, it must be an advanced high school course. It has to be a language course, so it'll fall under our languages other than English chapter in the TEKS. And it must provide instruction in industry terminology for students. So in a particular profession or industry or area of study. So one of the innovative courses that we have right now, for example, is Spanish for healthcare professionals. So that might be the type of course that a district could use. We believe what the state board will do is develop a generic course, and so that you could apply any language and any profession or field to that, depending on your community's interests, what type of job needs are in your area, etc. So that'll be up to the district. That'll be some activity that the board will engage in 2016, we believe. They'll start working on that course, and it'll be an advanced languages other than English course, but it is going to have direct ties to CTE, so we would probably, I'm sure the board will be looking for some representation on that committee from Career and Technical Education. House Bill 2014, another one that relates directly to career and technical education, but this one is more focused on certifications, on the educator certification side of things. And what this bill does is it asks the State Board for Educator Certification to ensure that a person who is current or former member of the U.S. military and trained in a specific trade be eligible for certification, for a professional credential from SBEC. So, for example, if an individual who is a veteran or a current member of the armed forces had specific training in a career or a field related to current technical education, for example, maybe it was automotive technology, for example, then they would be eligible for certification. They would be able to hold if they held a license. So that's another way, I mentioned the other day that we're well aware at the state level that there is a shortage of career and technical education teachers in this state. So this is another method that the legislature is going to put in place. I don't believe these rules are yet adopted, but that they will put in place to address the shortage. And then moving on to House Bill 2349, this is what the author of the bill called a House Bill 5 cleanup bill. And so it does just a little tweaking to the language for House Bill 5. One of the things that was discovered probably right after, or maybe even before this bill House Bill 5 was signed into law, is that there was already an outdated reference to a particular national assessment. The bill had said that for performance acknowledgments, students with outstanding performance on the SAT, ACT plan, or PSAT could be eligible for performance acknowledgement. Well, if you recall, last year, ACT switched the plan. That one went out of use, and they started using one called the Aspire. So all of a sudden now, statute and board rule were out of date, and there's nothing we could do about it. But now the legislature has fixed it, and now they've just said a generic national college preparation or entrance exam. So the board will now fix their rules to add ACT Aspire. The other thing that this bill did is that we realized pretty quickly that if you recall in the performance acknowledgments, the bill said that students may earn a performance acknowledgement when they earn a nationally or internationally recognized business or industry license or certification. And everybody immediately said, what about state recognized? What about our state credentials? And everybody said, oops, well, that was clearly an oversight. So House Bill 2349 has now added in language that says it can be a state-recognized credential as well. So, our state licenses and certificates would now be acknowledged. They already were in board rules. The board had figured out a way to work that in, but now it aligns with statute. And then last but not least is House Bill 2628. And House Bill 2628 is really a bill that's aimed at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, but will impact CTE in many ways because it deals with CTE programs of study. So CTE programs of study, for those of you who know, at the secondary level are very well aligned, and folks know about them. There's not a lot of confusion related to programs of study, I'd like to think. But at the post-secondary level, what we have learned is that there's not a lot of uniformity, and the legislature has decided that there needs to be more uniformity. So they have directed the coordinating board to convene advisory committees that are composed of representatives from secondary education, from business and industry, and from regulating bodies to do some work to develop a consistent and coherent program of study curricula at the post-secondary level. And included in all the regulations and the requirements in the law is an effective plan for the transfer of those credits from one institution to the other, which is in particular what we had heard is one of the dilemmas that institutions face. So the coordinating board will be partnering with TEA or may be partnering with TEA. We certainly like to think they will, and other state agencies as they develop these programs of study and as they convene those advisory committees. And so to the extent that we can and as we hear about it, we will certainly keep the field updated with information about that particular piece of legislation. Oh, I lied. This is the last bill that I want to talk about. So House Bill 3062, for those of you who are familiar with the Jobs and Education for Texans, or the JET program, this is a nice little piece of legislation that it was limited. It was a grant program that was limited to post-secondary institutions. This particular piece of legislation, House Bill 3062, has now extended it to apply to school districts. So a school district could also be eligible for one of the JET grants that come out of the Texas Workforce Commission. So that's good news, and I'm sure they'll be sharing more information about that as it's available. All right, so moving into my favorite topic, and that's the TECs, or the TEECs, and I say them both ways. Both ways are correct. But as you know, as I'm sure you've heard, for a little over 15 months, the State Board of Education has been deeply involved in the review and the revision of the CTE TEECs. So I wanted to share with you now that I can finally say it's final. They have adopted the new CTE text, so I wanted to start off with some information about this for you. But it starts off very confusing. So while the board has adopted the TEECs, they had to do it in such a manner that they're not going to be terribly easy to find. So we're going to try and make them easy to find for you. But they're doing, if you really want to know about technical rule and Texas Register stuff, they're doing what's called a repeal and replace of, if you know the TEECs, most of them are in Chapter 130. But you can't, usually we have our TEECs live side by side. The outgoing TEECs are right above the incoming TEECs, and it's very easy to find them. But we can't do that because there are so many courses in Chapter 130. So instead, we're just going to post all of these courses once they're filed with the Texas Register. The easiest thing to do will just go to the CTE webpage on the Texas Education Agency website. And we will have all of those newly revised TEECs there available for you. I would say that's probably going to be by the end of the month or so that those will be available. You can also get to them by going through the State Board of Education rule webpage, and I'll show you a little bit about how you can get there. So if you're on the TEA website, we have these great logos that go across the top of our page, any page on the TEA website. Click on the first one, which says about TEA right here, and then it'll bring up this drop-down menu, and you want to go straight below that. I'm sorry, you want to go all the way to the right where it says laws and rules, and click on SBOE rules. Then that will take you to this web page, and you're looking for the one that says adopted rules not yet effective. So yes, they're adopted. They won't be effective until 2017. So that's where you'll go. The page looks like that. And then you'll find this lovely list of all. Right now, we only have what we called Batch A, so about half of the career clusters are up. The other half are coming later this month. And Chapter 127 is also there on this page, so you can find them all right now. Once all the 200 plus courses are ready, they'll all be accessible, as I said, from the CTE webpage. So that's the best place to go if you haven't already gone looking for them. But let's talk a little bit about what the board did during their revision. So you know, I think most of you know that the State Board of Education has authority over the TECs, and they typically review or revise at least one subject area every year. And this last year, it was CTE's turn. And there were somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 committee members, and they were working on almost 200 courses. Some committees had a few courses, some committees had a lot. They were organized by career cluster and by the content of the courses. So it took a lot of work on their part, but they did finish reviewing and revising it. Throughout the process, we reached out to business and industry, we reached out to higher education, We shared the TEKS with the public, and we had lots of opportunities for input, and we heard from a lot of folks. Not really kind of all that work plus the board's work led to our final TEKS. So just to kind of you see what our timeline was, we began in June of 2014. The first group of CTE techs was adopted in April. That was about half of the career clusters plus career preparation. The last half of the CTE courses was just adopted a few weeks ago in September. So it was a lengthy process that we went through, but now they're all available. The next step for the agency is going to work on professional development. So we'll start rolling out professional development the year before the TEKS come out or will be implemented. So this time next year, we suspect that you'll be looking for PD for all these revised techs. That's a full year of professional development. Districts can do work to get used to them. I really want to encourage you to share this information with your teachers, with your counselors, with your administrators, because it's really important that everybody know about the revision, because there were some significant revisions that you might think, oh, they don't need to know about that. Yes, they totally do need to know about that, because there are some changes that I'll go over in just a minute. And then in 2017 and 2018, then teachers across the state will be required to provide instruction in the revised TEKS. And they'll be much easier to find. You'll find them in the same place that you can find them now. Also in 2017, there will hopefully be new instructional materials to align with these revised TEKS. So one of the things that our State Board of Education has done in recent years is they said we will not implement new TEKS unless the funding is available for new instructional materials. And so we'll wait to see what happens with the legislature in 2017. If, as they have in the past few years, if they appropriate funds for instructional materials, then the TEKS will be implemented in 2017, 2018. If they don't, then the board will hold off on the implementation of the revised TEKS. So the proclamation 2017 has already been released. Publishers are working on those instructional materials right now as we speak. We just met with them a couple of weeks ago, and they're very eager and very excited to produce new materials. So I'm very hopeful and confident that you'll be seeing more instructional materials as we move closer to the summer. So speaking of the summer, I think it's been shared with you that there will be soon an application available for folks to serve on those state review panels for instructional materials. As you know, as part of the board's adoption process, they convene committees of educators and the public to review any materials that were submitted in response to a proclamation. That will be happening this summer in Austin. So that application, you may self-nominate, you may nominate a colleague, board members may nominate individuals. That application should be posting, we've been saying any day now, about a week, but it really is any day now. That information will be coming out, and you can certainly apply or send it to individuals that you think might be interested. Okay, so what are the changes to the CTE text? Well, there's a bunch of new courses. So if you're just looking at it, just scanning the list, you'll see that we've jumped from just shy of 200 courses to closer to 275 courses. Where did all those new courses come from? Well, some of them are new fields that folks thought we needed to have standards on. So like, for example, oil and gas production. That's a series of courses that's brand new to our TEKS. But some of them are just the development of new lab-based courses. So they might have, like for example, health science clinical is a new course. It was content that was already in the TEKS, and now they've pulled it out into a separate course. So it's mostly new lab courses. There's also a bundle of new practicum courses, the extended practicum. So those are, again, content that was probably already provided to students, but now it's separated into two different courses, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that structure in just a moment. There's also the addition of new courses that may satisfy specific graduation requirements. So we've seen mostly in the area of mathematics, where we've got new courses that are being proposed to satisfy mathematics graduation requirements. We see a few in some other areas, but really some of those decisions are yet to be made by our State Board of Education. Also, you will see right at the top of the text for every CTE course, knowledge and skill statement number 1 in every single course is going to be dedicated to employability skills. And that was an attempt on the part of the committees and the state board to really bring those employability skills into a little bit, give them a little bit more attention and focus. It's going to be the first thing that everybody sees when they start to look at the TEKS underneath the introduction. So I will show you some examples of that. Elimination of credit ranges. As you know, CTE TEKS currently may be offered for up to, so they'll have a range in the title. It's typically 1 to 2 credits or 2 to 3 credits, and a district currently can make that decision on how many credits they're going to offer. It posed a problem, and so one problem is that a student in Texarkana could demonstrate proficiency in the exact same set of TEKS that a student in Clint, Texas could, but they might be receiving 2 different amounts of credit for the exact same proficiency. So that was an inequality that the board has addressed, and so I'll talk to you a little bit about the different ways that they have addressed that. But the credit ranges has been eliminated from the TEKS, so you won't see 1 to 2, but that flexibility for districts still exists, and that's where the lab-based courses and the extended practicum courses come in, and I'll talk to you about that in just a moment. A couple of other things, changes to the practicum courses, mostly in the way of credits. There's new practicum courses, and there's new extended practicum courses. And then there are also changes to course names. So I know teachers will be calling us and say, where is such and such course? Why isn't it here? Well, it's still there. It just has a new name in many cases. So we'll get into that. So new courses. There's a number of new courses all across the board, and I'm not going to read you this list, but you can kind of get an idea of what they are. There's a new practicum in animation. There's one of the lab courses that I was talking to you about, the addition of these lab-based courses. Business Lab is a good example. In manufacturing, they added an intro to welding course to the list, the sequence of welding courses. Brand new is a sequence of video game design courses. The list goes on. There's a new math course in Chapter 127 called Applied Mathematics for Technical Professionals. So closer to 2017, the board will decide which math credit that can count for. A new social media marketing course. So a lot of these are attempts to update based on new technology and new industry standards. In transportation distribution and logistics, we've got just kind of a flurry of new courses. You can see they've renamed automotive technology and redesigned it, maintenance and light repair, and then there's an automotive services course. There's new diesel equipment courses. Many of you may have already heard, because this course is already rolled out, financial mathematics, which is approved to satisfy a mathematics graduation requirement. And just the list just goes on and on. Several new courses in agriculture, food, and natural resources. You can see the list here. So turf grass management had been part of another course. They've now separated it out and given it its own course. And then one that I was particularly interested in, just because the committee that developed it was so excited about it, was the masonry courses in architecture and construction. And they were just thrilled to death to be able to develop the masonry courses, and so are we. And then there's also a new computer technician course has become a practicum. So lots of changes. We're not going to test you on these. You've got 2 years to kind of get used to what the changes are and the new courses. There's the oil and gas production courses that I mentioned. So lots of things. New criminal investigations courses over on the law, public safety, corrections, and security side. Lots and lots of interesting things going on. And the conversations that the CTE text review committees had were pretty amazing. I mean, they really want to make sure that our students are prepared to get out there and enter industry with the latest technology and the latest know-how, or go on and to post-secondary studies with that information. So I mentioned to you that most of the new courses for a specific graduation requirement are related to math. And so you can see the list there of the new courses that will satisfy a mathematics requirement. Now, because these are new courses, with the exception of financial math, which has been implemented during the current school year, these courses won't be implemented until the 2017-2018 school year. So you won't see them in the graduation requirements list until we get to the 2017-2018 school year. Don't panic if you don't see them in the list that the board's working on right now. It's because these courses won't exist until 2017. So as we get closer to then, the board will have meetings and they'll discuss exactly which math. Is it going to be the third math? Is it going to be the fourth math? They'll make some decisions about that. Same thing with the new science course. So what happened to the courses that currently can satisfy math, science, English, and fine arts credit? Nothing. They're all still in place. The committees recommended them to continue to satisfy requirements in those 4 areas. So you'll see those continuing on. There may be some additional courses from CTE that between now and 2017 will be recommended to satisfy a specific graduation requirement. Again, that's a decision that the board will make sometime in probably late 2016, early 2017. So if you're interested in that, follow the board's process, contact your board member, make sure you get a say in what they're going to do. All right, so the other change I talked about was employability skills. This is an example of the employability skills from the Accounting 1 course. And they didn't, in the current TEKS, they don't have employability skills, so the committee added these. They're front and center. As I said, they are knowledge and skill statement number 1. So you can see they just puts them in. The employability skills A, B, C, D, and E in this particular course, they vary by content area. So the employability skills for Accounting 1 are going to look significantly different than the employability skills for criminal investigations. So make sure that you take a look at those as you start to get familiar with the TEKS, or as you start working with your teachers in getting familiar with the TEKS. And all of these employability skills are based off of the Texas Workforce Commission's work that they've done related to soft skills development. So it was all based off of TWC, and we were glad to work with them on that. I mentioned to you the elimination of credit ranges. So we went from, in some areas, 1/2 to 1 credit, 1 to 2 credits, or 2 to 3 credits. They will now be a consistent range of credits. How did we do that? Well, in many cases, they split out theory from lab. One important thing is a student cannot take a lab course as a standalone course. It has to be paired with the theory-based portion. So that'll be something that we build into the PEAM system, or Texas Student Data System, so that it won't be possible to split them apart. And then in many cases, I think in almost every case, those lab courses are recommended co-requisites. They are not required. So a student could take a business management course and not take the business lab course in a district, but another district could say, no, we want you to take them together. And so currently, I've got 2 examples up here for you. One is animation. It's currently 1 to 2 credits, and it's got its PEAMS ID. Another good example is advanced welding. It's 1 to 2 credits, so it's got that range of credits. What this will look like in PEAMS is a district has the option. They may offer Animation 1 for 1 credit. There's their PEAMS, and that's just a made-up PEAMS code, by the way. Or they can offer Animation 1 plus Animation 1 Lab for a total of 2 credits. Can they offer just Animation Lab? No, they can't, because that doesn't make sense to offer the hands-on without the theory. So a district could have 2 choices here. If the example I used earlier, if Clint ISD wanted to offer Animation 1 plus Animation 1 Lab, they would use 1 PEAMS code, and if Texarkana just wanted to offer Animation 1 for 1 credit, they'd use a different PEAMS code. Same thing is true on the welding side. So they can take Welding 2 or Welding 2 plus Lab. So to prevent any strange things happening to your CTE courses or your scheduling, they will be blocked in the PEAMS system. scheduling, of course, is all locally decided. Practicum courses, they're all 2-credit courses now. Again, we've eliminated the range, but the extended practicum course is what will provide an option for a 3rd credit. So same story there. You can take the practicum in hospitality and tourism for 2 credits, or if your district prefers to offer that for 3 credits, you simply add in the TEKS for the extended practicum course, and boom, you're at 3 credits. And we'll set up the PIMS codes to prevent it. So a student will not be eligible to enroll in only an extended practicum course for 1 credit. It has to be paired with the practicum. New in the rules for the TEKS that students are going to be allowed to take practicums for a 2nd time. And this is something I want to highlight for you. The 2nd bullet there is that the board rules now say that the 2nd practicum must provide a different aspect of the industry and must focus on additional and more advanced knowledge and skills. So repeating the exact same course or the exact same content of the practicum, it needs to be different now, and starting in the 2017-2018 school year. And then, of course, kind of the last thing I wanted to share with you, I've had a lot of fun with this as we've gone through the process, is all the changing names. So when I first came to the Texas Education Agency, it was right after the last CTE text revision, and I kept getting calls about CTE courses, and these teachers were, they were very anxious and nervous, and my course is gone. It's not there anymore. And so, as we started investigating what they were talking about, it just changed names. And so this is kind of one of those things that we need to make sure we message very, very well. I've already had a couple of emails from teachers who have been rather panicked saying, the new TEKS dropped this course, why did you do that? And in some instances, they're angry. So in both instances, however, it was not that the board dropped the course, it's that the board changed the name. So on this particular slide, and we'll make sure we make these slides available to you, you can see the different name changes. So Exploring Careers has been renamed College and Career Readiness. Probably the one that will impact a lot of us is Problems and Solutions. It's a very popular course. It's been renamed Project-Based Research. The TEKS have been revised. They've not been significantly modified, but the course has been named. So the one that I talked to an individual, she was very nervous and concerned about restaurant management going away. It didn't go away. It was modified and changed, and it now has a new name of Introduction to Culinary Arts. So if you hear from your teachers, if they're a little freaked out and panicky because their course is gone, check the list, because more likely than not, it's just a name change. I think I'm only aware of maybe 1 or 2 courses that were eliminated entirely. Most of the time, they just simply went through a name change. And so it's a pretty long list of courses. There's a whole nother slide on it. Sometimes it's really simple change, like Principles and Elements of Floral Design is now simply Floral Design. That one will be an easy one to figure out. But sometimes it's a challenging thing for them to find their TEKS. So, for example, it may not be that easy to know that Principles of Engineering is going to become Engineering Science. So to the extent that we can, we're certainly going to communicate that to schools and to teachers. I'd also encourage you to make sure that they take a look to make sure that it simply wasn't a name change. So last thing I want to share with you is a couple of updates related to other subject areas. There are new math TEKS for 2 new courses, a statistics course and an algebraic reasoning course. Just wanted you to be aware that that's happening. There is currently another new personal financial literacy course under development. So financial mathematics is a personal financial literacy course that will earn a student math credits. But this personal financial literacy course is simply a half-credit elective course and should be adopted by the board in January of 2016. And then the next set of texts up for review are English and Spanish language arts and reading. So you may hear some talk about that in the coming months, as the board just started that process last month. So I promised one curriculum update, and that's related to the Texas Virtual School Network. For those of you who were here on Wednesday when I was out here, I did mention that we're really excited we did have a grant program that developed a number of new CTE online courses. Because we had heard from a lot of, especially our rural districts or isolated districts, that it was very difficult for them to find qualified teachers. So through the ECOP program, the Texas Virtual School Network went from four CTE courses to something like 14 or 19. But here is the list of courses that are now available in the Texas Virtual School Network statewide course catalog. You can see it's kind of, it ranges from health science to finance to arts and AV, just a number of courses. All courses taught in the Texas Virtual School Network are required to be taught by Texas certified teachers. So if this is something that your district wanted to take advantage of, you have kind of the comfort of knowing that A, those courses have been reviewed and to ensure that they align with the TEKS, and B, they are taught by Texas certified teachers. There are also some non-CTE courses in the list that have been added. In particular, what districts were asking us for a lot was computer science courses. So we're hoping to add some more in the coming years. And certainly if your district wants to get involved in that and help us create some online courses for the state, just let us know. We're happy to hook you up with the right people. All right, so that is it from me. I do want to share one last thing, and that is that coming up in the next week or two, we will be releasing our next curriculum division newsletter. And this is something we do twice a year. Our fall newsletter is coming out in just a couple weeks. It'll come out by the end of this month. And if you want to access it, I've given you our very long URL for how you can do that. But we'll also be sending out, Diana and her team will send out a listserv announcement with that newsletter attached to it. And you'll also have a link to get to this page, so you can get to it from there. And so my very last plug is go join our curriculum division newsletters. Go join the TEA listservs. These are really, I cannot tell you how valuable these listservs are. How many of you in the room are members of any of these listservs? Excellent. So I've got the list here for you if you're wondering what listservs are available. It is the best way I know of staying up to date on what's happening at the state level. And then we also provide announcements and information about other things that are going on across the state. I have a sister who is a new assistant principal this year, and the very first piece of advice I gave her was, go sign up for listservs, because that's really the best way. And she says that it makes her look really smart. So she knows things before other people do, so they really do work. Thank you all once again. I really appreciate your time and attention. And if there's ever anything that we can do for you, please don't hesitate to contact us. We're always available. We're always happy to help. That's a favorite part of our job. So thank you very much.